The bride's boutique crashed moments before she walked down the aisle. Her mother, the one she benched at table 8, was behind it. "I raised her alone," Margot said, stepping up to the mic. "She gave me silence. I gave her the echo." The wedding went viral, but not for love, for the mother who took back her name, her voice, and the business. Wait, before we go any further, I got to ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. They dressed me up like a prop and told me to behave like one. They dressed me up like a prop, pressed my hands together, pinned a corsage to my wrist, and told me to smile like I wasn't breaking. And just before the rehearsal started, my daughter leaned in, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Just don't speak during the toasts, okay? It's not really that kind of wedding." Margot Owens stood quietly in the bridal suite, sunlight slicing through the window blinds like judgment. The room buzzed with bridesmaids swirling champagne and compliments. Soft classical music played on a Bluetooth speaker. Everything was beige, Lily's favorite palette. Beige walls, beige flowers, beige personalities. Except for the woman standing by the window in a navy thrifted dress, fingers tightening around a half-full paper coffee cup. Margot had bought that coffee herself. They hadn't even asked her order. Across the room, Lily, her only child, was glowing in white lace, surrounded by the kind of friends who had names that sounded like brands: Sienna, Aubrey, Ella. Margot watched as her daughter turned, laughing, to hug her soon-to-be mother-in-law. "Diane, you look incredible," Lily said, looping her arm through the woman's. "Honestly, you've been such a dream. Thank you for helping with the guest favors." Diane beamed, adjusting her diamond-studded necklace. "Anything for our girl." "Our girl." Margot sipped her cooling coffee. She hadn't been asked about the guest favors, or the seating chart, or the rehearsal dinner. The planner referred to her once as Table 8, rear left, not mother of the bride. More like set decoration. Later that afternoon, while adjusting her shoes in the hallway, Margot heard a voice from around the corner. "Lily's. I just don't want her to make it about herself," Lily was whispering, exasperated. "She means well, but you know how my mom is. She always tries too hard. I'm scared she'll embarrass me." There was a pause. Another voice, probably Diane, replied, "You don't owe anyone the mic on your day." They both laughed softly, carefully, like guilt tiptoeing out the door. Margot stood frozen, her hands limp by her sides. She looked down at the shoes she'd spent 2 weeks choosing. Not too flashy, not too plain, comfortable enough to last all day. She remembered buying them on sale and still feeling a twinge of guilt, money that could have gone toward Lily's bridal suite deposit. But Lily had already forgotten that part. She had forgotten a lot. Back at her hotel later that night, Margot opened the small luggage she'd brought. No one had offered to help her carry it. She unzipped a side pocket and pulled out a faded leather journal. The edges were frayed, the cover etched with years of handling. On the front, in gold foil lettering almost rubbed off, 2001, start again. She sat on the bed, flipped to the first page. A photo was tucked inside, creased from being opened too many times. Margot and Lily in front of a rust-red duplex. Lily must have been 7, maybe 8. Pigtails, missing front teeth, holding up a sold sign with crayon all over her hands. That duplex had been their new start after Lily's father disappeared with the joint savings account. Margot had worked 3 jobs that year, one as a cashier, one cleaning offices after hours, one tutoring high school English at night. No child support, no family to lean on, just survival duct-taped with Grace and Lily. She had grown up thinking the world was built for her because Margot made sure she never saw how hard it was to hold it all together. Margot closed the journal slowly. Her reflection in the dark window looked different now, not small, not forgotten. She set the journal beside her and whispered to no one. "I kept my silence once. Not again." Margot opens a journal marked 2001 and says, "I kept my silence once. Not again." She was writing vows. I was rewriting my story. She was scribbling promises in gold-foiled journals, reciting lines like poetry about forever and faith. And I? I found a torn crayon drawing behind a drawer and remembered who kept her promises first. The hotel room was cold, the kind that felt over-air-conditioned and under-lived in. Margot had opened a drawer looking for a pen to write a note and instead found a crumpled piece of paper shoved behind the Gideon Bible like trash someone didn't know how to throw away. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Purple marker, slanted letters, big hearts dotting every I, me and Mommy best team. A stick figure with curly hair holding the hand of a smaller girl, both standing in front of what looked like a lemonade stand or a flower cart. Margot smoothed it gently with her palms, feeling the weight in her chest thicken. She remembered when Lily had drawn it. She'd been 7, maybe 6. They just opened a sidewalk booth outside their apartment to sell bouquets made from grocery store markdowns. Lily had called it Fancy Flowers by Mom and Me. Margot had skipped 2 meals that week to afford the supply run, and now this drawing, the only version of her where she was still in the picture, was dumped like clutter behind a hotel drawer. That afternoon, Margot arrived at the estate for the family dinner. White table linens, candlelight lanterns, string quartet in the background. It wasn't elegant, it was theatrical. James greeted her at the entrance with a handshake that felt like someone performing empathy from a textbook. "Mrs. Owens," he said, smiling, "how are your living arrangements?" Margot blinked. "My living? You're still in that old house, right?" he asked, glancing past her like she was an RSVP, not a person. "I just wasn't sure if Lily had moved you somewhere quieter." "No," Margot replied, letting the silence hang. "She hasn't moved me anywhere." He nodded awkwardly. "Well, hope it's still manageable." "It is," she thought. "I manage everything." At dinner, she sat at the far end of the long candlelight table, near the cousins and coworkers whose names she barely knew. The laughter was loudest at the center, where Lily glowed like a chandelier, radiant and rehearsed. Margot reached for her water just as Lily raised her glass. "Okay," Lily said, grinning. "This is random, but can we just take a second to appreciate how my mom still shops at actual thrift stores? Like, vintage is one thing, but she's been wearing that brooch since I had baby teeth." Laughter. A ripple of amusement down the table. Someone even clapped. Margot set her water down, smile unchanged. She looked at her daughter's ring, then at her own hands. These were the same fingers that once learned to braid hair with one hand while stirring soup with the other. She remembered every loan she'd signed, every tuition deadline, every panicked late-night call during Lily's boutique launch, every "Mom, I'll pay you back," every time she said, "Take your time." That night, Margot returned to her hotel room and placed the crayon drawing on the desk like a holy relic. Her phone buzzed. A name she hadn't seen in years, Celia Miles. "Still holding on to the trust account, call me. It might be time to stop pretending you didn't build the whole thing." Margot stared at the message, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled like she wasn't just surviving. Margot receives a message from an old friend. "Still holding on to the trust account." The photo wall had everyone except me. The wall of memories was backlit with soft amber light, but none of them belonged to her. Margot stood in front of the glossy slideshow monitor playing on loop near the entrance to the rehearsal venue, blinking at the familiar yet incomplete fragments of Lily's childhood. Birthday parties, ballet recitals, school awards, each moment framed in pastel borders, labeled with dates soaked in nostalgia. But something was missing, over and over. Her. There were group shots with Lily's friends, posed and polished, snapshots with James, even during their early dating years. There were selfies with Diane at bridal expos and candids with coworkers at boutique events. One image showed Lily, maybe age 10, holding a soccer trophy with dirt on her knees. Margot had taken that photo. She remembered kneeling on the sidelines with her disposable camera, heart bursting with pride, but the image had been cropped. The edge of her shoulder was barely visible, cut mid-frame like a smudge someone forgot to erase. She stood there, surrounded by laughter and clinking glasses, feeling like a ghost at her own daughter's museum. "Don't worry," a voice said from behind her, warm and real. "I remember who actually washed that jersey." Margot turned. It was Janet. Same soft curls, same smart mouth, wearing a long emerald shawl and a knowing smirk. She looked like she had walked out of the past and into the reception hall just to remind Margot that she hadn't imagined any of it. "You came," Margot said, startled. "You invited," Janet replied. "And I don't ghost the people who carried me through divorce, food stamps, and backyard wine in plastic cups." They hugged, tight and overdue. Outside, the garden was quieter. The late afternoon sun filtered through leaves, scattering dappled shadows across the gravel path. They walked slowly, arm in arm, the air thick with unsaid things. "She cut me out," Margot finally whispered. "Literally," Janet said. "That slideshow looks like you raised her telepathically." Margot chuckled, but it caught in her throat. "I used to think if I stayed out of the way, she'd find her own center. but now it feels like she mistook my quiet for absence. She didn't just forget you, Janet said. She forgot you were the reason she ever had something to remember. They stopped at a wooden bench and Margot sat down slowly, hands wringing. You ever regret staying silent for too long? She asked. All the time, Janet said, but I also remember what happens when I stop. Margot looked up, eyes misty but steady. I have something, a thing I never used. Janet raised an eyebrow. What kind of thing? Margot looked over her shoulder, checking to make sure no one was within earshot. Something I didn't even mean to keep secret. I just never thought it would come to this. That night, long after the garden lights dimmed and the venue emptied out, Margot drove home. The roads felt longer than usual. Or maybe it was the weight of everything she hadn't said yet. At her modest, quiet house, still painted the same pale blue Lily used to complain about, Margot stepped inside and locked the door behind her. She moved to the hallway closet, pushed aside an old suitcase, and opened the wall-mounted safe tucked behind layers of coats and linens. Her fingers hesitated before turning the dial. Left to 14, right to 6, left again to 19. Click. Inside were a few papers wrapped in a manila folder and a velvet box containing Lily's baby bracelet. Margot pulled the folder out. Inside, original boutique registration documents, equity transfer letters, a co-signature page from Lily's first lease. At the bottom, in Margot's own writing from 5 years ago, ownership 40% M. Owens, to be held in reserve until requested. She stared at the papers, then said aloud to the quiet room, They may have erased me from the slideshow, but I still own the frame. Margot opens a safe back home and pulls out original equity papers tied to Lily's bridal boutique. They gave me a corsage, not a voice. They gave me a corsage, pinned it to my chest like a decoration, something pretty, silent, and easily removed. But they forgot I still held the pen that signed the checks. Margot stared at the place card in her hand. The script was elegant ivory cardstock with gold foil lettering, Margot Owens, Table 8. She turned it over, expecting something, a note, a smiley face, a mother of the bride title, but it was just blank. Her name, flat and isolated, like she'd been invited as a guest, not birthed the bride. She followed the table map and immediately understood. Table 8 sat near the back corner behind James's co-workers, a few high school friends, and someone Lily used to nanny for. It was positioned close enough to the buffet, but far enough from the stage that she'd need to squint to catch a clear view. She was closer to the exit than the head table. James's parents, on the other hand, were everywhere. She saw them reviewing flower arrangements with the planner, directing ushers, sampling hors d'oeuvres and crystal dishes. Diane's opinions were being treated like gospel, her suggestions scribbled directly into the clipboard by the wedding coordinator. Margot smiled politely when their eyes met, like she hadn't noticed the difference in treatment, like she hadn't seen how invisible she'd become in a room she paid for. The thought wouldn't leave her. So she took a breath, walked over to the wedding planner, a young woman in a headset holding an iPad, and spoke as softly as she could. Hi there. I just had a small question about the vendor payments. Just wanted to double-check something. The planner blinked. Sure. What kind of details do you need? I funded the early deposits, Margot said evenly, just wondering how the final invoices were paid out. Did the boutique cover it? The planner tilted her head. Oh, I was told to use the Owens bridal account for most of the balances. You're the primary contact listed for the venue, actually. Margot's throat went dry. She kept her expression smooth. And that was never changed? No, ma'am, all under your name. Is there a problem? Margot smiled. Not at all. Thank you for confirming. She turned away slowly, feeling her pulse tighten with every step back to the garden. Later that evening, back at the hotel, Margot sat on the edge of the bed and opened her phone. She scrolled past Lily's latest bridal countdown post, 2 days until forever, and opened her calendar app. She tapped the screen, created a new event. Title speech, file time, 3 p.m. wedding day alert on. Then she opened her notes app and began typing. Not a rant, not a revenge monologue, just thoughts, memories, moments she might say if the moment came. She ended the note with one line. They gave me silence. I turned it into a statement. At 7:15 p.m., she drove to a law office tucked between a notary and a tax consultant. The receptionist greeted her with a professional nod. Miss Owens? Yes, I have a meeting with Attorney Kaplan. He was waiting in a glass-walled office, sleeves rolled to the elbows, salt and pepper hair, warm eyes. They shook hands. I want to restructure my shares, Margot said without sitting down. The 40% I hold in Lily's bridal business, I want to move them into an LLC quietly, with me as managing member. Kaplan leaned forward. Is this about future planning or leverage? Margot looked him dead in the eye. It's about identity. Mine. She meets with a lawyer that evening. I want to move the shares into an LLC, quietly. They gifted me silence. I returned it wrapped in gold. The gift box was small, delicate, gold-edged. Everyone assumed it held a sentimental necklace, maybe something old to wear for luck. No one suspected it carried the weight of a decade, a daughter's oversight, a mother's final rewrite. The pre-wedding brunch was held in the rooftop garden of a boutique hotel downtown. Sunlit, fragrant, curated for Instagram. Long tables lined with pale pink roses and rose-filled flutes shimmered under a white linen canopy. Tiny acrylic signs labeled everything from the organic quiches to the bride tribe napkin holders. Margot arrived early, wearing a pale sage blouse and linen pants, soft flats, and the same brooch Lily had mocked days earlier. She didn't care. The air smelled of lavender oil and artificial grace. "Mom," Lily beamed as she approached her, white sundress floating around her like an affirmation. "You made it! You look relaxed." "I am," Margot said warmly. "And I brought something for you." She handed her the small box, light enough to seem like a trinket. Inside, a gold chain with a soft rose pendant. Lily's eyes sparkled. "This is actually really pretty." She held it up for everyone nearby to admire. Then she noticed the folded paper underneath. "What's this?" she asked, unfolding the letter with one hand as she sipped from her glass with the other. Margot smiled. "Just something I've been meaning to finalize for a while." Lily skimmed it casually until her smile began to falter. "Effective upon signing, 40% equity share shall transition to sole managing partner status under the name Margaret Owens." Her jaw tensed. "Is this legal?" Margot sipped her tea. "Oh, very. But why would I need a managing partner? It's just paperwork, right?" "It's structure," Margot said simply. "Every boutique needs one." Lily laughed awkwardly. "You're not serious." Margot just tilted her head. "You always said I should be more involved." Lily dropped the paper back in the box like it might bite her. "This feels dramatic. Are you trying to prove something?" "No," Margot said, standing slowly. "I'm remembering something." "What? That I paid for the building?" She kissed her daughter on the cheek. "Enjoy your brunch." 3 hours later, Lily sat in her apartment, chewing on the edge of a pencil, hair in rollers, laptop open to finalize vendor orders before rehearsal dinner. She logged into the boutique dashboard. Access denied. She blinked. Tried again. Error. User privileges revoked. Contact managing partner. Her phone buzzed immediately after. Store manager Claire. "Hi, Lily. Sorry to bug you. Just confirming the leadership transfer. Do you want us to reroute invoices to your mom now?" Lily's hands trembled. She didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed her iPad and launched the boutique's payment portal. Nothing. Locked out. Another text came in. Claire again. "She just asked us to freeze all future marketing spend until after the wedding. She's super polite, but is everything okay?" Back in her own home, Margot stood at the kitchen counter slicing lemons into tea, calm, unbothered. She hadn't changed the password herself. That had been the lawyer's instruction, standard security, post-LLC restructure. Her phone buzzed. This time she didn't pick up. She just walked over to her laptop and opened the boutique's admin dashboard. The banner at the top loaded slowly. A second passed, then 2. Then the words appeared in bold. Effective immediately. New managing partner, M. Owens. Margot smiled, but it wasn't triumphant. It was freeing. She whispered to no one in particular, "Silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes it's just waiting for the right time to speak." Lily opens her laptop and sees effective immediately new managing partner M. Owens. She wore lace, but her face cracked with fear. The veil framed Lily's face in soft ivory tulle. But beneath it, beneath the powder, the highlight, the curated calm, her mouth was tight, her breath shallow. She wasn't glowing, she was cracking. Margot stood near the full-length mirror in the bridal dressing room, calmly sipping cucumber water while stylists fluttered around Lily like panicked butterflies. Hairspray lingered in the air like mist, then the door slammed. "Mom!" Lily's voice sliced through the noise like scissors against satin. Margot didn't flinch. She turned slowly, locking eyes with her daughter. I need to speak with you, Lily said through clenched teeth. The room went silent. One of the stylists awkwardly slipped out, still holding a curling iron. They stepped into the hallway outside, just past the hanging eucalyptus garland. The moment the door shut, Lily spun around. What did you do? Margot raised an eyebrow. Be specific. My store login is blocked. Claire said you've frozen the marketing budget. I can't even see the client calendar. You're listed as managing partner. Margot folded her arms, her voice calm. Correct. You gave me a necklace, Lily snapped. Not a hostile takeover. Margot's gaze sharpened. You gave me silence, public humiliation, a seat at the back table. This isn't revenge, Lily. It's administration. You could have warned me. You asked for boundaries, Margot replied. This is one. James appeared halfway through the standoff, tux half-buttoned, expression uneasy. Ladies, he said lightly, can we maybe de-escalate? It's the wedding day. Margot turned to him without missing a beat. James, how much do you know about Lily's oversight of the boutique finances? He blinked. I mean, she handles the books, the payroll. Why? Margot said evenly. Because I'll be reviewing everything now. And if you've been looped into any creative accounting, I'd suggest finding a lawyer before you find a photographer. Wait, what are you accusing me of? Lily snapped. I'm not accusing, Margot said. I'm investigating. The pre-wedding meeting was called 30 minutes later in a side room meant for gift storage. Lily sat at the head of the table, veil now resting on her shoulders like a ghost of her intentions. Margot sat opposite, legs crossed, expression unreadable. James stood between them like a referee who'd just realized he didn't know the rules. I don't want this to escalate, Lily said. We're a day away from a six-figure event. Can we just pause all of this? Margot looked at her daughter as if she were seeing her for the first time, not as a bride, but as a brand who'd been marketing love while quietly writing her mother out of the script. I haven't said a word publicly. I haven't posted. I haven't even corrected anyone who called Diane your real mom. I've let you shape the story, Lily, and all I've done in return is secure the parts I paid for. You're trying to ruin my wedding? I'm trying to protect my investment. Margot stood, smoothed the crease in her blouse, and reached for the door. James stepped forward. Please don't leave like this, she paused. I stayed through worse. And with that, she left. No threat, no storming out, just departure. Sometimes the loudest statement is the sound of the door closing behind you. That evening, alone in her hotel room with the lights dimmed and her shoes finally off, Margot's phone buzzed. Text from Marcus, boutique accountant. Hey, we found some irregularities in the ledger. Client double charges, miscategorized expenses. Want to discuss? Margot stared at the message, then slowly smiled. The veil wasn't the only thing about to be lifted. Margot receives a text from the boutique accountant. We've found irregularities. Want to discuss? They tried to bury me in a back row, but I saw everything. They placed her in the back row, table 8, far enough from the altar that her daughter wouldn't catch her gaze, but close enough to witness every lie dressed in lace. Margot sat still, spine straight, hands folded around a program printed in soft blush pink. Her name wasn't mentioned, neither in the printed vows nor in the speech that was now echoing through the flower-scented air like a sermon no one questioned. Lily stood at the altar with James, tearful, poised, glowing in a designer gown Margot had helped fund. And to our families who shaped us, challenged us, and gave us the foundation to grow, thank you. She paused for effect, then turned and smiled warmly at Diane and her husband seated front and center, their hands already clapping. Margot didn't blink. The word mother never left Lily's mouth, not once. It was the kind of silence that doesn't fall but tightens, a vacuum in the middle of celebration. Margot adjusted the corsage pinned to her wrist, its ribbon beginning to itch beneath her cuff. She leaned slightly and pulled her handbag onto her lap. Inside, tucked between a folded shawl and a spare lipstick, was a small black USB drive. Next to it, a sealed envelope containing the guest list, the one that Lily had forgotten to send her until the last minute, scribbled with last-minute revisions and backhanded exclusions. She turned the drive slowly in her fingers, watching the gold-plated ends catch the light. She wasn't just watching anymore. She was recording, calculating, preparing. The ceremony ended with applause and soft violin. A cascade of white petals rained down like snow from a hidden chute above the aisle. Margot stood with the rest, clapped politely, then sat as others surged forward for hugs and photos. Her phone buzzed. Inbox from hidden sender at protonmail.com, subject boutique transfer records finalized, attachment client rebuilds final.pdf. The file opened with a satisfying click. 12 pages. Expense trails, duplicate charges, forged signatures, and Lily's name attached to every login. Margot hit forward to admin.co, subject. Review immediately. Confidential message, anonymous tip, start here, more to come. She tapped send, then closed her purse with a soft snap. Moments later, as the guests filtered toward the reception space, a young wedding staffer, maybe 19, fresh-faced with a headset tangled around her shoulder, hurried up to Margot. She bent low, whispering, "The mic at the end of the toasts, it'll be open for 1 minute, just one. Bride's family gets the last slot." Margot turned her head slightly. "You sure?" "Yes, ma'am." "Do you want me to signal you?" Margot smiled, slow and soft. "No signal, I'll know." She watched the girl retreat into the crowd, then pulled out her program and scribbled a note in the corner. Just one word. Restraint. Not rage. Not spectacle. Just truth if the moment asked for it. And if it didn't, she still had the drive. A wedding staff member whispers to Margot, "The mic will be open for 1 minute." "You sure?" One mic, one moment, one truth bomb. The mic sat alone at the center of the reception floor, gleaming, untouched, waiting, just like she had. Margot watched from her corner seat as guest after guest rose with glasses in hand and anecdotes polished to perfection. The toasts came in waves, James's best man cracking jokes from college, Diane wiping away tears as she recounted the moment Lily first called her mom, each word like a pin pressed against her chest, each laugh like applause for her erasure. When the MC announced the final open mic slot for the bride's family, no one moved. The silence stretched. Lily glanced toward Diane. Diane smiled politely and shook her head. James gave a small shrug. Then Margot rose. There was a slight pause in the music. A chair scraped the floor. A fork clinked against a wine glass as someone's hand froze mid-toast. The crowd's hum dropped to a hush as she walked forward one step, then another. Her shoes soft against the parquet wood, her corsage still fixed tightly to her wrist. She reached the mic. For a moment she simply stood there. She didn't clear her throat, didn't tap the mic. She just looked out at a sea of faces that knew her as the woman who stayed quiet, paid bills, smiled through being sidelined. And now they were watching, waiting. Margot leaned slightly forward and spoke. "Silence doesn't mean absence." She let the words hang, gentle but unmistakable. "It means restraint." A small intake of breath rippled through the room. She looked toward the head table. Lily was still. James stiffened beside her. Diane reached for his hand. "I've spent most of my life behind the lens, behind the scenes, behind the curtain," Margot continued, her voice smooth as silk drawn tight, "and I chose that. I believe that love was best shown in sacrifice, quietly, consistently, uncredited." She smiled then. It wasn't bitter. It was brighter than anyone had seen all evening. But sometimes the people you love forget who built the foundation they're standing on. Margot nodded once, stepped back, and walked off the floor. No mic drop, no tearful finale. Just truth wrapped in velvet tone and graceful steel. For a beat, the room didn't know how to react. Then a few claps, slow, hesitant, and then a scatter of more, confused and polite. But the murmurs, those didn't stop. Was that the mom? She owns part of the boutique, right? Wait, did she just say what I think she said? Lily sat frozen, the wine glass in her hand shaking slightly, her cheeks flushed pink but not from the champagne. James's parents exchanged a look that said more than any toast had all night. Back at table 8, Margot sat down, calm and still. She didn't smile this time, she just breathed. The room shifted after that. Eyes turned, conversations dropped. No one quite knew what to make of a woman who had just reclaimed her identity in under 2 minutes without raising her voice. Across the room, a woman in a maroon pantsuit pulled out her phone and tapped open the camera app. She hit record. Later that night, after the dancing had begun and the newlyweds were swallowed into the chaos of the crowd, the blogger uploaded the clip to her lifestyle page. Urban Ember, mic drop at the Williams Owens wedding, but not the one you'd expect. Watch this mother reclaim her story with one line. The caption, "Not all mothers are made for the spotlight, but sometimes they walk into it anyway." A local blogger in the audience uploads the clip. It begins to spread. The crowd clapped politely, but behind the curtains, panic erupted. The music was still playing, champagne still poured, guests danced, laughed, posed for photos. But just beyond the draped arch near the hidden vendor hallway, the real performance had begun. Unrehearsed, unscripted, and anything but elegant. Margot stood just inside the corridor connecting the main ballroom to the service area, out of sight but not out of range. Her back rested against a wall of faux cherry blossoms, her phone loose in her hand, still warm from the upload. From the other side of the wall, muffled voices escalated. The tone was unmistakable. Lily and James. What had started as a whisper was now escalating into something raw. "You said it was handled?" James hissed. "It was. Until she pulled this stunt." "She didn't pull anything, Lily. She owns it. That's what your cousin just confirmed." "Margot's name is on everything." "She wouldn't have used it against me until you made it worse." Margot listened, not for satisfaction, for clarity. She opened her phone and calmly typed a message to Claire, boutique manager. "Freeze all active spending on Lily's company card indefinitely until further notice." The send icon pulsed blue. A small act, a large effect. Backstage, Lily's voice broke through the noise like glass. "She made me look like a stranger at my own wedding. She said nothing for years, and then what? Mic drop wisdom? Who does that?" James didn't answer immediately. "You didn't tell me she funded everything," he said, quieter now. "Not just helped, but paid? The shop, the apartment down payment, even this wedding? She's everywhere in this story, and you cut her out like she was an embarrassment." Lily's heels clicked furiously as she paced the narrow carpet. "She was embarrassing! The thrift clothes, the old-school discipline, the constant modesty like some martyr?" "She built everything you walk on," James snapped. Margot stepped back a few inches, her face calm, eyes unreadable. The music from the ballroom swelled. "You Are the Reason" playing over a slow waltz. A moment later, the hallway door creaked open. Lily stepped out, eyes wild, mascara just beginning to smear at the corners. Margot didn't speak first. "I trusted you to stay quiet," Lily said through clenched teeth. "Just this one day. Just one day." Margot tilted her head slightly. "And I trusted you to tell the truth." "You blindsided me in front of everyone." Margot's voice was still composed. "Number. I reminded you of the parts you were raised. You're ruining me." "No, Lily, I'm simply reclaiming what's mine." Lily's chest heaved, her hands balled at her sides. Margot leaned in, just enough to drop the final line. "Check the terms you signed, page 4. Then she walked past her, slow, deliberate, corsage still pinned like a quiet badge of war. Inside the ballroom, James's phone buzzed. He stepped into the shadows to answer. "This is Marcus," the accountant's voice said briskly. "We've begun an internal audit based on some flagged activity. The boutique's account is under formal review. We'll need statements from both partners by Monday." James blinked. "Audit? Wait, now? Today?" "I don't set the timing," Marcus replied. "The system flagged it, and we've got incoming press inquiries, something about a wedding speech clip that's going viral." James turned slowly, his face drained. At the bar, Diane sipped white wine and leaned toward Lily, who was now frantically scrolling through her phone, ignoring her untouched cake. "You never told us your mom paid for everything," she said, not cruelly but carefully. Lily looked up, eyes burning, because she was never supposed to matter. Diane's eyes widened just enough, and in that second the room didn't feel like a wedding anymore. It felt like a reckoning. James's mother says to Lily, "You never told us your mom paid for everything." She forgot to read the fine print. "I never did." The boutique halts operations. Margot's licensing clause is triggered. Lily had read every caption, every bridal blog, every influencer contract, but she skipped the most important line of all, buried in fine print inside the contract her mother co-signed 5 years ago. And now her boutique wasn't just hers anymore. It wasn't even open. It began with a silence. A vendor email sat unopened in Lily's inbox for 3 hours before panic pulled her back to her laptop. The subject line was bland. Urgent order cancellation notice. But the body hit like a truck. Due to suspension of operating license, Owens Bridal Company are unable to complete your wholesale shipment until further compliance is verified. Contact your licensing partner for resolution. At first, she thought it was a glitch, but then came another and another. By the time she reached out to Claire, her boutique manager, 3 appointments had already been canceled and 1 social media collab had been postponed until further clarity. The digital front of the boutique, once polished and pristine, now read like a polite obituary. That night, Margot sat in her lawyer's office once again. She wore a soft charcoal sweater, no makeup, no jewelry, calm as a bank vault. Attorney Kaplan leaned back in his chair, glasses at the tip of his nose. The clause holds. Reputation risk was explicitly defined. Public scandal, especially involving client fraud, financial mismanagement, or damage to brand equity, qualifies as triggerable grounds. She called me a liability, Margot said. Turns out she was the one holding the match. Kaplan nodded. Your name is attached to the boutique license. Without your signature, the business legally can't operate, not until full internal compliance is met. Margot took a breath, then asked, How long can we hold the freeze? As long as needed. Technically, you are the brand. And she forgot that. Flashback, 5 years earlier. A cramped cafe booth, 2 coffee cups half drunk, a printed contract between them. Lily, 27, radiant, idealistic, scribbling with a pink pen. Just sign here, Mom. It's mostly logistics. Legal language. Margot skimmed, paused at the 3rd paragraph from the bottom. In the event of reputation risk, including but not limited to fraud, slander, or public misconduct, the undersigned reserves the right to suspend operational access pending review. She pointed. You're okay with this? Lily waved it off. Just lawyer paranoia, like earthquake insurance in Kansas. Margot signed, but not blindly. She remembered every word. Now 5 years later, the earth had shifted, and the clause, quiet and dusty, came roaring to life like an alarm someone forgot they installed. Lily stared at the legal packet on her doorstep as if it might self-destruct. The words were too sharp to look at, but too urgent to ignore. Notice of operational suspension due to breach of ethical compliance and triggered contract clause. Owens Bridal Company will halt operations until full review and approval from all managing parties. Attached were screenshots from a boutique client who had been overcharged and a snippet from the now viral wedding toast clip with Margot's voice echoing, Silence doesn't mean absence. It means restraint. Lily crumpled the papers, but they didn't disappear. They simply folded tighter, like truth pressing back. That evening, Margot sat by her kitchen window as the sun bled orange across the sky. The air smelled of steeped tea and autumn leaves. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. A smooth voice introduced itself. Marissa Chen from Valor Bridal Concepts. Margot blinked. Yes. We heard about the boutique situation. Unfortunate, but honestly avoidable. We're interested in the lease if you're considering a transition. It's a prime location and your name still holds value. Margot didn't answer immediately. Marissa added, You built something. We'd rather preserve it than watch it rot. Margot stared out the window, her reflection barely visible in the glass. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. But she did reach for her pen. Margot is approached by a competitor offering to buy the boutique's lease. They called me a ghost. Now they're haunted. They said she was invisible, quiet, unimportant. Now they were whispering her name in hushed corners, like the shadow they never expected to come back with receipts. The brunch room at the hotel was smaller, quieter. No music this time, no champagne, just tension disguised as conversation and a plate of untouched muffins between them. James's family sat in a tight half-circle, his mother, father, and older sister. No Lily in sight. We didn't know, Diane began, her voice unusually measured, about the boutique or the money or any of it. Margot sat across from them, hands folded calmly in her lap. A soft beige sweater hugged her shoulders. Her presence didn't shout. It settled. I understand, she said. She never wanted you to. James looked pained. She's spiraling. The vendors, the press, she's trying to fix it. Margot's gaze was steady. Sometimes the only fix is consequence. There was a long silence. Chairs creaked slightly as people shifted, uncomfortably aware that they were not in control of the narrative anymore. You're not really selling the boutique lease, are you? Diane ventured. Margot didn't blink. I've signed the letter of intent. The words landed like a gavel. Outside the glass doors, the world kept moving. Cars passing, trees swaying, children laughing somewhere. Inside, the temperature dropped. James exhaled hard. You're really doing this? She weaponized my silence, Margot said softly. Now I'm using it like armor. Diane frowned. But won't this destroy her? Margot's eyes lifted. You don't ask about the bruises until the vase hits your floor. Where was this concern when she placed me at table 8 behind her high school math teacher? No one answered, because there was nothing left to say. Back at her house, a dusty shoebox sat open on the kitchen table. Its contents spilled like memories too fragile to carry alone. Polaroids, ribbons, hand-drawn cards, report cards with stars at the top, and "You did it," scribbled in red ink. Janet sat beside her, flipping through the photos with slow, reverent fingers. "This one," she smiled, holding up an image of Margot and Lily at a state fair, cotton candy melting in Lily's fist. "She looks happy." "She was happy," Margot said, "when the only thing she cared about was whether I could see her on the Ferris wheel." Janet handed her a stack of photos. "You didn't disappear. She just cropped badly." They both chuckled, though it wasn't from humor. Margot picked one photo out from the stack. Lily at her high school graduation. Margot beside her in a navy dress, the same one she'd worn at the pre-wedding brunch. She opened her phone and created an Instagram story. The image slid into frame. No filter, no caption overload, just a few words in white, truth stitched in silence. She hit post and walked away. Somewhere across the city, Lily's phone buzzed. She tapped it open, saw the story, froze. The comments had already begun trickling in. Nothing harsh, just curious. "Wait, this is her mom? She was always there? We need the full story." For the first time, Lily realized what her wedding had become. Not a celebration, not a brand moment. A thread unraveling with her mother holding the needle. Margot posts a subtle story online, truth stitched in silence. She got her spotlight and saw what it cost. The clip was just 61 seconds long. No shouting, no drama, no theatrics. Just a woman at a microphone, voice calm, spine straighter than the altar flowers behind her, saying one line that echoed far beyond the wedding hall. Silence doesn't mean absence. It means restraint. Within 48 hours, the video had passed 500,000 views. A parenting blog reposted it, then a podcast host. Then a celebrity mom with 4 million followers wrote, "To every woman who raised children alone and got cropped out of the story, this is your moment." Mothers across timelines stitched their stories together. Photos of school pickups, hospital nights, college deposits signed in quiet, the caption, "Mother Unfiltered." Lily watched it all from her apartment, her phone screen flooding with notifications. Only this time the comments weren't applause. They were accountability. "Wow, you never mentioned your mom funded your business." "She raised you and you erased her? Cold?" "Funny how you call her emotionally distant. But she's the one who built your runway." The spotlight Lily had curated for years, pruned, filtered, perfect, was now blinding. In an attempt to shift the tide, Lily uploaded a photo of her and Diane captioned, "Healing is messy, so is love. Grateful for the women who guide us even when it's hard." Cue chosen family. But the comment section had grown sharper, unforgiving. "Not her real mom, babe. This aged poorly. Try tagging the woman who gave birth to you." The post was deleted within 2 hours, but the internet doesn't forget what you erase, especially when you taught it how. Meanwhile, Margot stood beneath soft stage lights on a small indie set in a downtown studio. A microphone was clipped to her collar. A makeup artist gently dusted her cheeks. The interviewer across from her, a woman half her age, looked at her like she was holding sacred text. "Margot," she began, "can you talk about what emotional labor looks like when it's invisible?" Margot smiled, soft but sure. "It looks like a child walking on polished marble, never realizing who mopped the floors." Behind the camera, someone wiped a tear. The docuseries was titled Unseen, The Mothers Who Built Empires Quietly. Margot didn't ask to be featured. But when you stop shrinking, the world starts noticing your shape. Later that night, Margot sat at her kitchen table when her phone rang. It was James. His voice was flat, strained. "She won't listen," he said. "She never did. I told her I need space," he added. "Time to think. Figure out who I married and why she's terrified of truth." Margot didn't gloat. She just nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see it. "I hope you figure it out," she said, "before she does more damage." There was a pause on the line. "She doesn't hate you," James said quietly. "She just doesn't know how to admit she's wrong." "Then this story ends how it began," Margot said, me doing the hard part quietly. 2 days later, she met Janet at the boutique building for the last time. The front windows still bore Lily's calligraphy, Owen's Bridal Company. But the lights inside were off. No floral displays, no clients, just silence. Margot slid a folder across the table. Inside, final sales documents, lease reassignment papers, a letter of appointment. Janet opened the folder slowly. "You're giving this to me?" "You believed me before anyone else did," Margot said. "You helped me remember who I was. This place deserves someone who doesn't need the spotlight to show up." Janet's hands shook slightly. "What about Lily?" Margot looked out the boutique window. The sun had started setting, gold streaking the glass. "She got her moment," she said, "and saw what it cost. Then she signed. Boutique is sold." Margot signs over management to Janet. "She edited me out of her life. I published the uncut version. Margot reveals a private recording exposing Lily's intentions. Lily once cropped Margot out of family photos, newsletters, press blurbs, even her own boutique's about page. But Margot had been recording more than memories. She had kept the raw footage. The audio wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. In fact, its quietness made it worse. You could hear the murmur of background cafe music, the clink of a teacup, and then Lily's voice, soft, calculated, unmistakably hers. "If I shift the ownership before the new quarter, the board won't flag it. My mom doesn't even check the paperwork. She trusts me, always has." Pause. "I just need her signature without her realizing it's a reassignment. She'll probably assume it's some tax thing." A long sip, then laughter. "And she still signs with that little flourish, like she's proud to be part of something." The last line sliced deeper than any public post ever could. Margot had recorded it months ago during what Lily claimed was a casual catch-up over chai. A gut feeling made her press record. She hadn't even listened to it until the audit began. Now it was Exhibit A in the court of public opinion. The clip was released to a private investigative blog. Not a gossip site, but one known for exposing manipulative business practices in ethical industries. The headline, "When Family Becomes Leverage, the Boutique Betrayal." Within hours, it was everywhere. Influencers who had once partnered with Lily went silent. Brands quietly archived their collabs. And those who had previously pitied her for being ambushed at her wedding, they vanished too. Margot didn't watch it unfold in real time. She was at the downtown community center, standing in front of a small chalkboard in a rec room that smelled faintly of crayons and Lysol. Across from her sat 6 young mothers, all in hoodies, some with babies and carriers. "I'm not here to preach," she said, handing out printed packets. "I'm here to pass the ladder down." The packets were labeled Owen's Grant, first-year support for single mother entrepreneurs, funded fully through the final boutique sale. She didn't build an empire to prove anything to Lily anymore. She built it so no other mother would have to feel invisible while holding the whole world on her back. That evening, she sat in her reading chair with the lamp low and the radio playing softly. A text pinged from Lily. "I was wrong, but you humiliated me." Margot stared at the message for a long time, not because she didn't know how to respond, but because she finally understood that nothing she said would change the lens Lily looked through. So she said nothing. Instead, she stood, walked to her hallway closet, and pulled out an old wooden keepsake box. Inside was a folded piece of yellowed construction paper, crayon hearts, lopsided letters. "To my mommy, you're my hero and my favorite person." She looked at it for a moment, then gently placed it inside a dark oak frame, not for herself but to return it, to remind Lily of the version of herself she used to be, the version who once saw her mother. 2 days later, Lily received a box at her apartment. Inside the framed letter, a note taped to the back. No threats, no explanations, just 3 handwritten words in Margot's script. "I kept everything." Margot mails back Lily's childhood letter framed. The lights dimmed, but I stayed standing. The world didn't stop. Not after the wedding, not after the boutique sale, not even after the truth spilled like red wine on satin. But for the first time in a long time, Margot didn't feel like she was walking through it unseen. She sat on a park bench beneath a canopy of fading maple leaves, the late afternoon sun washing the world in gold. The breeze carried the faint scent of cinnamon from a nearby bakery. Children's laughter bubbled from the playground. Beside her, Janet crunched into an apple with the satisfaction of someone who finally had nothing left to prove. "You know," Janet said between bites, "this whole saga, you should write it down." Margot glanced at her. "Write it? A memoir, a story, something raw, honest. God knows there are thousands of women who'd see themselves in it." Margot chuckled. "What would I even call it?" Janet raised an eyebrow. What else? She reached into her tote and pulled out the place card Margot had slipped into her pocket after the wedding. Still creased, still branded with the number that was supposed to be a dismissal. Margot stared at it. Something clicked. Table 8, she whispered. That's it. That night at home, she opened a fresh notebook, leather-bound, still stiff at the spine. She wrote, Table 8, the seat they didn't want and the view they couldn't handle, and beneath it, by Margot Owens. Her pen didn't stop for the next 3 hours. 2 weeks later, her inbox pinged with a subject line she didn't expect. Podcast invite, Mothers Unheard, Stories That Shaped Us. A producer had seen the mic drop video, then the blog interview, then the docuseries clip. Now they wanted her voice. Unfiltered, unpolished, undeniable. In the recording booth, headphones snug against her ears, the host asked, Do you think Lily ever truly saw you? Margot paused. I think she saw the version of me that was most convenient, she said. But now I live full frame and I don't shrink anymore. The audio would go viral within 48 hours. Back at her kitchen counter one morning, the kettle whistling faintly in the background, Margot checked her email. Among the unread spam and news alerts, one subject line stood out. I used to ignore my mom. Not anymore. From Celia Andrews, bride-to-be. Miss Owens, I don't know you personally, but I watched your video. I'd planned to seat my mother at the back of my wedding. She's loud, unfashionable, and always brings up childhood stuff I don't want to hear. But then I realized she's the reason I can walk that aisle. So I moved her to the front. Thank you for reminding me who raised me. Margot's throat tightened as she read the message again, slower this time. She didn't respond right away. She just stared at the line, tears quietly forming at the edge of her lashes, not from pain but relief. The echo of her voice was no longer confined to a 1-minute speech. It was rippling through strangers' lives. That evening, she sat at her desk and pulled up a browser tab she hadn't touched in years. Travel booking. Under destination, she typed Lisbon. It was where she'd always dreamed of going. Pastel houses, seaside, quiet cafes that didn't ask for anything but presence. She scrolled through flights and then she booked it. No second guessing, no permission asked. Just a suitcase, a new passport photo, and one entry under purpose of travel. First vacation ever. Margot books a flight to start her first real vacation in decades. They placed me at the wrong table. I built my own stage. The segment opened with a black screen and soft piano. Then her voice, layered over clips of stitched dresses, blinking cursor lines, and a woman stepping to a mic with more than a toast in her throat. Silence doesn't mean absence. It means restraint. The title card followed. Mother of None, Voice of Many. Margot sat on her couch, wrapped in a knit shawl, a steaming mug of honey tea in hand, as the national news program played her story. It wasn't just a feature anymore. It was a movement. The segment moved from her wedding speech to the viral wave it triggered. Single mothers, estranged daughters, caretakers, forgotten matriarchs, each one recounting how they'd swallowed their voices for too long. Margot had become the accidental catalyst for something bigger. She watched without flinching, not from pride, not from spite, from stillness, the kind that only comes after a lifetime of noise being thrown at you like confetti. Later that week, she stood behind a podium at a community center with folding chairs, a leaky ceiling, and a packed room of over 200 people. There were no marble floors, no floral arches, but everyone listened. Some stood in the back, arms crossed but eyes wet. A few took notes. Most just sat, silent and open. I'm not here to preach, Margot began, gripping the wooden edges of the podium. I'm here to tell the truth. She didn't name Lily, didn't recount every betrayal. She spoke about invisibility, about the ache of being erased by the person you once stayed up all night holding, about building empires behind closed doors while others claimed the view. It's not shameful to serve in silence, she said, voice steady, but it is shameful when others mistake that silence for weakness. The applause wasn't wild. It was reverent, earned. Somewhere behind a phone screen, Lily watched it live, her apartment dim, the walls now stripped of bridal mood boards. The boutique's website down for transition. Diane hadn't called in days. James hadn't returned since the night he packed a duffel and left a single note. I'm choosing honesty now. Lily stared at her mother's face on screen, small but strong. There was no rage in Margot's tone, just truth sharpened over years of exclusion. She didn't reach out. Not yet. Not because she didn't want to, because she no longer knew how. Back in her study, Margot lit a candle, pulled open the drawer of her old writing desk, and removed the leather-bound journal. She flipped to the last page. The handwriting had changed over the chapters, less cramped, more fluid, unapologetic in ink. She uncapped her pen and wrote slowly, "I raised her in love. She buried me in shame. I resurrected in truth." Then she closed the journal, tied the ribbon around its spine, and filed it beneath the completed manuscript of Table 8. Outside, wind rustled through the street trees. Lisbon was just 2 days away, her first real vacation. No one to chaperone, no one to impress, just her, a suitcase of paperbacks, and a quiet seaside apartment booked under her own name. She grabbed her phone one last time, opening her socials to a flood of tags, a trending hashtag, another mention in a mother's rights coalition, and a video clip from the community event. She hit repost with one caption. "They gave me silence. I gave them the echo." She locked the phone, walked to her closet, pulled out her suitcase. The lights were dimming on the old version of her life, but she was still standing. And now she was finally walking on her own stage. She gave me silence. I gave her the echo.